How does a man become cold-hearted? No one is born that way. No child enters the world with an empty heart or an unfeeling soul. A man doesn't wake up one day and decide to stop caring. Instead, it happens slowly, like a gradual winter creeping into his spirit, freezing everything it touches. It starts with small disappointments, moments where he opens up only to be ignored, times when he trusts only to be betrayed. Eventually, the weight of these experiences begins to change him. The world teaches him that kindness can be exploited, that love can be a weakness, and that the ones he holds closest are often the ones who hurt him the most. So, he adapts. At first, he fights against it. He tries to hold on, to believe in people, to give second chances, but over time, he learns. He learns that vulnerability invites pain. He learns that warmth can be met with coldness. He learns that no matter how much he gives, there will always be those who take without giving back. And one day, something inside him shifts. He no longer reacts the way he used to. The things that once hurt him barely register. He stops hoping for apologies. He stops expecting loyalty. His heart, once open and eager, now feels numb. Not because he wanted it to be, but because it had to be. Throughout history, great thinkers have explored this transformation. Some have argued that detachment is a sign of wisdom, while others see it as a symptom of a deeper tragedy. The Stoics believed that emotional control was the key to inner peace. They taught that a man should never be ruled by his feelings, that he should accept life as it comes, without being shaken by its hardships. But is there a difference between self-mastery and emotional numbness? Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, the man who rises above weakness and becomes his own master. He rejects the need for external validation, choosing instead to create his own meaning. But does this mean turning cold to the world? Many have misinterpreted Nietzsche's words, using them to justify apathy, cruelty, and indifference. Schopenhauer, on the other hand, saw life as endless suffering. He believed that to feel deeply was to invite pain, that detachment was not a choice, but an inevitable response to the cruelty of existence. His philosophy speaks to the man who has been hurt so many times that he no longer sees the point in trying. And then there are the existentialists, Sartre, Camus, who argue that in a meaningless world, emotions themselves are absurd. If nothing truly matters, why should a man care? Why should he love, or trust, or hope? These philosophies help explain why a man might become cold-hearted, but they don't answer the bigger question: is this transformation necessary? Or is it simply a tragedy in disguise? In this article, we'll break down the journey step by step of how a man becomes emotionally detached. We'll explore the key experiences that lead to this shift: betrayal and trust erosion. How being deceived or abandoned can make a man shut down. The role of rejection. How love, family, and society can push a man into isolation. The impact of power and success. Why ambition often leads to emotional detachment. The role of trauma and suffering. How deep pain can make a man lose his ability to feel. Social conditioning. How culture and media glorify the lone wolf and encourage emotional distance. But there's more to it than just the causes. We'll also explore the consequences, how cold-heartedness affects a man's life, his relationships, and his future. Some men believe that shutting down is a form of strength, a way to protect themselves from further harm. But does it truly protect, or does it only create a different kind of suffering? By the end of this journey, we'll arrive at the final question. Is it possible to be cold-hearted without losing your humanity? And if so, is that kind of existence truly worth it? The answers, as we'll see, are not as simple as they seem. When a man becomes cold-hearted, it's not just because of personal experiences. His mindset is shaped by something deeper, the way he understands life, emotions, and suffering. Whether he realizes it or not, his emotional detachment is often rooted in certain philosophical ideas. Some philosophies teach that emotions are a weakness. Others suggest that caring too much leads to suffering. And some go even further, questioning whether feelings have any real meaning at all. To understand how a man becomes cold-hearted, we need to look at 4 major schools of thought. Stoicism, the belief that emotions should not control us. Nietzsche's philosophy, the idea that strength comes from overcoming weakness. Schopenhauer's pessimism, the belief that suffering is unavoidable, so detachment is necessary. Existentialism, the idea that life has no built-in meaning, so emotions are just part of the absurdity. These ideas don't force a man to shut down, but they help explain why he might do it. The ancient Stoics believed in emotional control. They taught that a man should not let his feelings dictate his actions. Instead, he should accept whatever happens in life with calmness. Thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca saw emotions, especially fear, anger, and sadness, as distractions. They believed a wise man should train himself to rise above these emotions. At first glance, and this might sound like being cold-hearted, but true Stoicism isn't about being numb, it's about finding balance. A Stoic still feels emotions, he just doesn't let them take over. But many men misunderstand this. They think that to be strong, they must shut down completely. Instead of mastering their emotions, they suppress them. Instead of learning to handle pain, they ignore it. A Stoic chooses self-discipline. A cold-hearted man chooses isolation. This is the difference between a man who controls his emotions and a man who has lost touch with them completely. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that weakness should be overcome. He spoke of the Übermensch, or overman, a person who rises above fear, social expectations, and emotional dependence. To many, this sounds like the ideal of a cold-hearted man. If being emotional is a weakness, does that mean a strong man must reject emotions altogether? Not exactly. Nietzsche didn't say emotions were bad. He said that a strong man doesn't let emotions make him weak. The overman doesn't need approval, doesn't seek pity, and doesn't live by other people's standards. But many twist Nietzsche's words into an excuse for cruelty. They think strength means not caring. They believe rising above weakness means rejecting love, kindness, and empathy. In reality, Nietzsche's overman doesn't avoid emotions. He controls them. He doesn't stop feeling. He chooses how to use those feelings. A man who becomes cold-hearted may think he's becoming an overman, but in reality, he's running away from pain, not rising above it. If Nietzsche spoke of strength, Arthur Schopenhauer spoke of suffering. Schopenhauer believed that life is full of pain, disappointment, and struggle. He argued that people suffer because they desire things they can't have: love, happiness, purpose. For a man who has been hurt too many times, this philosophy can feel true. If life is full of suffering, then why care? Why hope? Why feel? Schopenhauer's answer was simple: detach. If pain is unavoidable, then the best way to avoid suffering is to stop wanting things that bring pain. For a cold-hearted man, this idea makes sense. If caring only leads to disappointment, then why care at all? If love only leads to heartbreak, then why love? But here's the problem. Schopenhauer's detachment is different from emotional numbness. He believed in letting go of desires to find peace, not shutting down to avoid pain. A truly Schopenhauerian man doesn't become cruel or empty. He simply stops expecting life to be kind. But a man who turns cold takes this idea too far. He stops expecting, stops hoping, and eventually stops feeling altogether. If Stoicism seeks control, Nietzsche seeks strength, and Schopenhauer sees suffering. Existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus ask a different question: does anything even matter? Existentialists argue that life has no built-in purpose. Meaning isn't given to us. We have to create it ourselves. A man who becomes cold-hearted might start to believe this on some level. If there is no meaning, then emotions are just random chemical reactions. Love is just an illusion. Pain is just part of existence. For Camus, life itself is absurd. He said that people keep searching for meaning in a world that doesn't offer any. A cold-hearted man, in a way, has accepted this idea. He sees no reason to connect, to trust, to feel. But here's the paradox. If life is absurd and meaningless, then why not choose warmth over coldness? If nothing truly matters, why choose detachment over love? The existentialist who truly understands life's absurdity doesn't run from emotions. He embraces them, knowing they're fleeting. A cold-hearted man, however, uses existentialism as an excuse, not to free himself, but to justify his detachment. A man doesn't turn cold because of philosophy, he turns cold because of life experiences. But philosophy can shape how he reacts to those experiences. If he's been hurt, he might turn to Stoicism, believing that feeling nothing is better than feeling pain. If he sees kindness as weakness, he might embrace Nietzsche, thinking that emotions make a man soft. If he's tired of disappointment, he might adopt Schopenhauer's belief that detachment is the only escape. If he sees no meaning in life, he might follow existentialism, believing that emotions don't matter anyway. But these ideas are often misunderstood. Stoicism is about control, not suppression. Nietzsche's overman still feels, he just doesn't let emotions rule him. Schopenhauer wanted peace, not emptiness. And existentialists don't reject emotions, they just recognize their absurdity. In the end, philosophy doesn't make a man cold, pain does. Philosophy simply gives him the words to explain what he already feels. The real question is, what experiences push a man to this point? That is what we'll explore next. A man does not become cold-hearted for no reason. It is not a personality trait he is born with, nor is it a random change. Instead, it is the result of experiences that reshape how he sees the world, experiences that teach him that warmth is dangerous, that trust is foolish, and that feelings bring more pain than they are worth. Some men become cold because of a single life-altering event. Others are shaped by years of small, repeated disappointments that slowly wear them down. Either way, the transformation is gradual. At first, he resists it. He tries to believe in love, in loyalty, in connection. But eventually, he learns, sometimes the hard way, that the safest way to live is to stop feeling altogether. Psychology helps explain why this happens. There are 5 major psychological causes that push a man toward emotional detachment: betrayal and trust erosion. When trust is broken too many times, a man stops giving it. The role of rejection. Repeated rejection convinces a man that caring is pointless. The impact of power and success, climbing higher in life, can make a man see emotions as a weakness. The role of trauma and suffering. Extreme pain can force the brain to shut down emotions for survival. Social conditioning. Many men are raised to believe that emotional suppression is the definition of strength. Each of these factors plays a role in the process of becoming cold-hearted. Some hit suddenly, like betrayal. Others work slowly, like social conditioning. But in the end, they all lead to the same outcome: a man who no longer allows himself to feel. Betrayal is one of the most powerful forces that changes a man. Trust is the foundation of human connection. When a man trusts someone, whether it's a romantic partner, a best friend, or a family member, he lets his guard down, he opens up, he allows himself to be vulnerable. But when that trust is broken, something inside him shifts. A man who has been cheated on may begin to believe that love is a lie. A man who has been stabbed in the back by a friend may start to think that loyalty is an illusion. A man who has been abandoned by family may feel that he cannot rely on anyone but himself. At first, he tries to hold on to his faith in people, but betrayal is not a one-time lesson. The first time it happens, it shocks him. The second time, it hurts. By the third, fourth, or fifth time, he learns. He learns that trust is a weakness. He learns that letting people in only gives them the power to hurt him. And so, he stops trusting. Not just the ones who betrayed him, but everyone. Over time, his heart hardens. Not because he wants it to, but because it feels safer that way. Rejection is another force that pushes a man toward emotional coldness. While betrayal breaks trust, rejection makes a man feel unwanted, as if he does not belong. It comes in many forms: romantic rejection, being left, ignored, or never chosen in the first place. Familial rejection, feeling like an outsider in one's own family. Social rejection, being isolated, bullied, or treated as invisible. At first, rejection stings. It makes a man question himself. Am I not good enough? But when rejection happens again and again, he stops questioning. He starts believing, if I open up, people will leave the tea. If I care, I will only get hurt. If I love, I will not be loved in return. This belief becomes his reality. Eventually, he stops expecting acceptance. He stops trying to connect. He detaches, not because he wants to, but because it feels like the only way to protect himself. Not all men become cold-hearted because of pain. Some become this way because of power. There is a well-documented psychological effect called the power paradox. As people gain success, wealth, or influence, they often become less empathetic. Why? Success isolates people. The higher a man climbs, the fewer real connections he has. Power rewards detachment. In leadership, business, and competition, emotions are seen as a liability. Wealth reduces struggle. Many people develop empathy through hardship. A man who no longer struggles may forget what it feels like. Powerful men often start with good intentions, but over time, they start seeing people as means to an end. They become distant. They become calculating. Not every successful man becomes cold-hearted, but many do. Not because they were born that way, but because power changes the way they see people. Few things shut down emotions like deep trauma. When a man goes through extreme pain, whether it's war, abuse, death, or prolonged hardship, his mind adapts for survival. To cope with overwhelming pain, the brain starts numbing emotions. This is not a choice. It is a biological response. A soldier who has seen war may struggle to feel love the same way again. A man who has lost someone close may decide that attachment isn't worth the risk. A victim of childhood neglect may grow up never learning how to express affection. Over time, this emotional numbing becomes permanent. What starts as a coping mechanism turns into a way of life. A man who has suffered deeply does not choose to be cold. He simply forgets how to be anything else. Lastly, society itself plays a role in shaping cold-hearted men. From a young age, boys are taught, real men don't cry. Be tough. Never show weakness. Men learn to suppress emotions, not process them. They learn that stoicism is strength, that vulnerability is dangerous, and that being cold is better than being hurt. In movies and media, the emotionless, detached man is glorified. The lone wolf, the alpha, the ruthless leader who never lets emotions get in the way. Over time, many men internalize this message. They don't just act cold, they become it. Not because they want to, but because they were taught that this is what a man should be. A man becomes cold-hearted because life teaches him to be. Betrayal shows him that trust is dangerous. Rejection convinces him that caring is pointless. Power makes emotions feel unnecessary. Trauma shuts his feelings down for survival. Social conditioning tells him that being cold is the only way to be strong. Some men embrace this transformation. Others wish they could feel again but don't know how. The real question is, once a man reaches this point, can he ever come back? That is what we will explore next. A man who becomes cold-hearted does not just lose his emotions, he also changes the way he sees right and wrong. Morality for most people is tied to feelings. We help others because we care. We avoid hurting people because we feel guilt. We form bonds because love, kindness, and connection give life meaning. But what happens when those emotions fade? Does a man lose his morality when he stops feeling? Or does he simply develop a different kind of morality, one based on logic, discipline, and personal rules rather than emotion? Some argue that emotional detachment makes a man stronger and more rational, that it allows him to make better choices without being clouded by feelings. Others argue that without empathy, a man loses his sense of humanity. In this section, we will explore 3 key ethical questions. Can a cold-hearted man still be moral? Does morality require emotion? Or can a man follow a moral code without feelings? The paradox of strength versus weakness. Is shutting down emotions a sign of power, or is it actually a form of fear? Is empathy necessary for morality? Can a man still do the right thing if he no longer cares about others? These questions will help us understand whether emotional detachment is simply a survival strategy or something much darker and more dangerous. Is morality based on emotion, or can it exist without feelings? The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that true morality is based on duty, not emotions. He believed that a person should do the right thing not because they feel like it, but because it is their responsibility as a rational being. By this logic, a cold-hearted man can still be moral. He may help others, not out of kindness, but because it aligns with his principles. He may avoid harming people, not because he feels guilt, but because he believes in fairness and discipline. He may follow a strict code of honor, even if he has no emotional attachment to it. In this view, morality does not require emotions. It only requires rules and self-discipline. But here is the problem. What happens when morality is separated from feelings entirely? If a man does not feel guilt, what stops him from making cruel choices? If he does not feel remorse, what makes him correct his mistakes? If he does not feel compassion, what keeps him from seeing people as objects rather than as human beings? Morality without emotion can become cold, rigid, and detached. A man may follow rules, but those rules may no longer be connected to human experience. He may still believe in right and wrong, but without empathy, his moral code may become more about logic than about kindness. A cold-hearted man may still be moral, but his morality may feel more like a calculation than a sense of justice. Many men believe that shutting down emotions makes them stronger. They see coldness as a form of power, a way to protect themselves from manipulation, pain, or weakness. And in some ways, they are right. A man who is emotionally detached is less likely to be deceived by false promises or emotional tricks, more disciplined, making decisions based on logic rather than impulse, more stable, not affected by the highs and lows that destroy other men. But here's the paradox. Is emotional detachment actually strength, or is it fear in disguise? A man who avoids love because he fears heartbreak, is not strong. He is running from pain. A man who refuses to show vulnerability because he fears judgment is not powerful. He is afraid of being seen as weak. A man who never trusts anyone because he fears betrayal is not wise. He is controlled by fear. True strength is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to feel and still remain in control. A cold-hearted man has not conquered his emotions. He has escaped from them. What looks like strength is often just avoidance. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It is what makes us feel guilt when we hurt someone. It is what motivates kindness, generosity, and fairness. So if a man loses his emotions, does he also lose his sense of right and wrong? Some argue that empathy is not necessary for morality. Logic alone can guide ethics. A man does not need to feel sorry for someone to know that harming them is wrong. Rules can replace emotions. A man can follow a code of honor, duty, or fairness, even if he does not care about emotions. Compassion is unreliable. Feelings change from moment to moment, but moral principles do not. So a detached man may actually create a more consistent moral system. But there is a danger in removing empathy from morality. A man may become indifferent to the suffering of others. He may start seeing people as tools rather than as fellow human beings. He may justify cruelty, believing that kindness is unnecessary if it is not rational. History has shown that a world without empathy is a dangerous place. It is empathy that prevents cruelty. It is empathy that motivates people to stand up for the weak. A man who lacks empathy may not become evil, but he may stop caring about good and evil altogether. And when morality becomes just a set of rules rather than a deep sense of right and wrong, it loses its heart. A man who becomes cold-hearted does not necessarily become immoral, but he does become different. He may still follow a moral code, but it will be based on logic rather than compassion. He may appear strong, but that strength may be built on fear of vulnerability. He may still make moral choices, but without empathy, those choices may become cold and detached. The real question is not whether a cold-hearted man can still be moral, it is what kind of morality he will have. Some men believe that detachment makes them stronger. Others eventually realize that it has taken something from them, something deeply human. The next question is, what happens when a man lives this way for too long? What are the real consequences of emotional detachment? That is what we will explore next. Becoming cold-hearted is often seen as a form of protection. A man hardens himself to avoid pain, to stop being hurt, to prevent disappointment. He convinces himself that by shutting down emotions, he is making himself stronger, smarter, and more resilient. But everything comes with a price. Emotional detachment may shield a man from suffering, but it also robs him of joy, connection, and meaning. The very feelings he tries to escape, pain, heartbreak, betrayal, are the same feelings that give life depth. Without them, he may find himself trapped in an existence that feels empty, isolated, and mechanical. In this section, we will explore three major consequences of emotional detachment: personal isolation and the loss of deep connections. How shutting down emotions creates loneliness, even if a man doesn't realize it at first. Societal ramifications. The rise of apathy. How emotional detachment, when widespread, leads to a colder, less compassionate world. The psychological toll. Depression and emotional exhaustion. How suppressing emotions for too long can lead to mental and physical exhaustion. A man may believe he is protecting himself, but he may not realize what he is giving up in return. One of the first and most obvious consequences of becoming cold-hearted is isolation. At first, a man may not feel lonely. In fact, he may feel relieved. Without emotions, he no longer feels the sting of betrayal. He no longer worries about losing people because he has already convinced himself that he doesn't need them. But over time, something happens. His relationships become shallow and transactional. He may still interact with people, but there is no depth, no real connection. He may push away those who care about him, whether intentionally or not. He may realize that while he has avoided pain, he has also avoided love, friendship, and belonging. The truth is, humans are social creatures. Even the strongest men need connection. A man who cuts himself off from emotions may believe he is choosing independence, but in reality, he is choosing loneliness. Many cold-hearted men convince themselves that they are fine living this way. But as the years pass, they often find themselves feeling empty, not because they are weak, but because they have denied themselves one of the most essential aspects of being human: the ability to feel and connect with others. A man who loses his emotions does not just lose pain. He loses the ability to truly experience life. Emotional detachment is not just a personal issue, it has effects on society as a whole. When one man becomes cold-hearted, it affects the people around him. When many men become emotionally distant, it affects entire communities, relationships, and cultures. Families suffer. When fathers, sons, and brothers shut down emotionally, they struggle to connect with their loved ones. Children grow up without warmth. Relationships become transactional rather than meaningful. Romantic relationships break down. When men see emotions as a weakness, they avoid intimacy. Love becomes a game rather than a bond. The rise of emotionally detached men leads to a culture where commitment and deep connection become rare. Society becomes colder. If people stop caring about emotions, compassion fades, apathy spreads. People become more selfish, more ruthless, and more disconnected from one another. Some argue that emotional detachment is necessary in today's world, that caring too much makes a man vulnerable. But there is a danger in widespread emotional numbness. If people stop valuing emotions, they stop valuing each other. Crime and violence increase when empathy disappears. Corruption and greed thrive when morality is reduced to logic rather than feeling. Friendships, families, and communities weaken when people no longer care about real human connection. A world without emotion is not a world of strength, it is a world of emptiness and survival, rather than meaning and purpose. A man who becomes cold-hearted may believe he is only affecting himself. But in reality, his choice has a ripple effect, touching everyone around him. At first, shutting down emotions feels like freedom. A man no longer feels pain, stress, or disappointment. He convinces himself that he has escaped suffering. But what he does not realize is that suppressing emotions takes energy. The brain is not designed to be completely numb. Even if a man shuts down his emotions, they still exist beneath the surface. Over time, suppressing emotions causes stress on the mind and body. What starts as emotional detachment can turn into deep, chronic exhaustion. Many men who become cold-hearted eventually develop symptoms of depression, even if they don't realize it. They feel constantly tired, but do not know why. They lose interest in things that once made them happy. They start to feel that life is meaningless, even if they have success, wealth, or status. The reason? Because shutting down emotions does not remove them. It only buries them. For a while, emotional detachment feels like a strength. But as the years pass, the weight of unprocessed pain builds up. Eventually, the mind and body start to break down. A man who becomes cold-hearted to avoid suffering may end up suffering more than he ever expected. Many men become cold-hearted to protect themselves, to avoid pain, betrayal, and disappointment. And in some ways, it works. But it comes with consequences. Personal isolation. A man who shuts down emotions may avoid pain, but he also loses deep relationships and human connection. A colder society. Emotional detachment does not just affect the individual, it creates a world where compassion fades, relationships weaken, and people become more selfish. Mental and emotional exhaustion. A man may think he has escaped suffering, but the mind is not designed for complete numbness. Over time, emotional suppression leads to chronic stress, depression, and inner emptiness. A man who chooses this path may not realize what he has lost until it is too late. This leads to the final question. Is it possible to return from this? Can a man who has become cold-hearted ever regain his ability to feel? That is what we will explore next. A man does not become cold-hearted overnight. It takes years of experiences, betrayal, rejection, trauma, and disappointment to build walls strong enough to shut out emotions completely. But once a man reaches this state, can he ever come back? Can someone who has trained himself to feel nothing ever regain warmth, connection, and meaning? The answer is complicated. Some men remain emotionally detached for life. They see their coldness as strength. They do not want to change because they believe it protects them. But others, especially as they grow older, begin to feel the weight of their own numbness. They realize that while they have avoided pain, they have also missed out on love, joy, and real human connection. For those men, the question is not just, can I change, but how do I undo years of emotional detachment? This section will explore 3 ways a man can reconnect with his emotions: philosophical and psychological. Methods for reconnection: using reflection, therapy, and self-awareness to break emotional barriers. Love and vulnerability as a path to renewal. How healthy relationships can help a man feel again. Spiritual and ethical approaches. How purpose, service, and selflessness can bring warmth back into a man's life. A man cannot simply flip a switch and feel again. But with effort, patience, and the right mindset, he can begin to open the doors he once locked shut. The first step to emotional reawakening is understanding why a man became cold in the first place. Philosophy and psychology both offer valuable tools for this process. By exploring his own past, his beliefs, and his behaviors, a man can begin to see how and why he shut down and what he must do to change it. Many men avoid thinking about their emotions because they don't want to deal with them. But real change starts with honest self-examination. Some important questions to ask. When did I start feeling emotionally numb? What experiences taught me that emotions are dangerous? Am I truly happier this way, or am I just avoiding pain? Do I feel disconnected from others? If so, why? What emotions do I still feel, even if I don't show them? A man who spends time reflecting on these questions will often realize that he is not as numb as he thought. He has simply been ignoring his emotions for so long that they feel buried. For many men, professional therapy can be a powerful tool. A trained therapist can help identify deep emotional wounds, unresolved pain, and subconscious fears that keep a man stuck in cold-heartedness. Therapy is not about forcing a man to become emotional. It is about helping him process emotions in a way that feels safe and natural. Even without therapy, simple techniques like journaling, meditation, or mindfulness can help a man reconnect with his feelings. Writing about past experiences can bring hidden emotions to the surface. Meditation can help a man observe his emotions without judgment. Mindfulness can help a man experience the present moment instead of living in his head. Through self-reflection and psychological growth, a man can begin to feel again, slowly but surely. Emotional detachment often develops as a response to pain. A man shuts down because he has been hurt by love, by betrayal, by rejection. For many, the key to healing is learning to trust again. Not all relationships are damaging. Some people, whether romantic partners, close friends, or family members, offer genuine warmth, safety, and acceptance. A man who has been emotionally closed off for years may struggle to accept love and kindness. But if he allows himself to experience a relationship where he feels truly safe, his emotional defenses can slowly begin to lower. The key is to choose relationships that are built on trust, respect, and patience. A man cannot force himself to open up, but in the right environment, he may find himself doing so naturally. Many cold-hearted men fear vulnerability because they see it as weakness. They believe that to open up is to invite pain. But vulnerability is not about being weak. It is about being real. A strong man does not hide from emotions. He faces them head-on. A wise man does not avoid love out of fear. He chooses love despite the risks. A fulfilled man does not isolate himself. He finds people who bring out the best in him. By embracing the possibility of real human connection, a man can begin to thaw the ice that has surrounded his heart for too long. Some men reconnect with their emotions through spirituality, service, or a sense of higher purpose. When emotions feel too painful or too foreign, shifting focus toward helping others can be a powerful way to restore warmth and meaning. One of the biggest consequences of emotional detachment is a sense of meaninglessness. A man may feel successful, wealthy, or independent, but still empty inside. Helping others, whether through mentorship, charity, or personal service, can reignite emotions in a natural way. Helping those in need can restore a man's sense of compassion. Mentoring younger men can remind him of the wisdom that comes from experience. Building something meaningful, whether a business, a community, or a creative project, can restore passion and purpose. Through acts of service and creation, a man may find himself feeling again without even realizing it. Many men reconnect with their emotions through spiritual or philosophical reflection. This does not necessarily mean religion. It can be any system of belief that helps a man make sense of life and his place in it. Some men find peace through Buddhist principles of self-awareness and detachment from suffering. Stoic philosophy that teaches how to balance reason and emotion. Religious faith, which offers comfort, purpose, and a sense of belonging. When a man sees himself as part of something greater, his emotions start to matter again, not as weaknesses, but as part of the experience of being alive. A man who has become cold-hearted is not doomed to stay that way. But change does not happen overnight. It takes self-awareness, trust, and a willingness to open up bit by bit, step by step. The three main paths to emotional reawakening are self-reflection and psychological growth, understanding why he shut down, and taking steps to process emotions in a healthy way. Love and vulnerability, allowing safe relationships to help break emotional barriers. Spiritual and ethical renewal, finding meaning through service, purpose, and a higher sense of self. The question is not, can a man feel again? The question is he willing to try? Because deep down, his emotions never truly disappeared. They were just waiting for the right reason to return. A man does not become cold-hearted by accident. It is a slow transformation, shaped by pain, betrayal, rejection, and life's harshest lessons. He does not wake up one morning and decide to feel nothing. It happens over time, like a fire slowly losing its warmth, burning out until there is nothing left but cold embers. At first, emotional detachment feels like strength. He tells himself he is no longer vulnerable. He is no longer weak. He is in control. He convinces himself that by shutting down his emotions, he is protecting himself from the very things that once caused him pain. But there is a truth that many cold-hearted men eventually come to realize. What once felt like protection slowly begins to feel like a prison. The walls that kept the pain out also keep the joy out. The barriers that shielded him from betrayal also keep him from trust. And the emotional armor that once made him feel invincible eventually starts to feel like a weight, something he carries but can never put down. This is the thin line between strength and isolation. A man who masters his emotions is strong. A man who runs from them is only hiding. Many men believe that becoming emotionally cold is the key to avoiding suffering. They tell themselves, if I don't care, I can't be hurt. If I don't trust, no one can betray me. If I don't love, I will never feel loss. And for a time, this belief feels true. There is no heartbreak if there is no love. There is no disappointment if there are no expectations. There is no pain if there is no attachment. But the price of this protection is high. A man who closes his heart to pain also closes his heart to joy. He may avoid sorrow, but he also avoids happiness. He may avoid betrayal, but he also avoids deep, meaningful relationships. He may escape disappointment, but he also never allows himself to hope. This is why emotional detachment is not true freedom. It is simply another kind of prison, a life where a man is untouchable, but also disconnected, where he is safe, but also alone. At some point, a man must ask himself, is this truly the life I want? Some men will say yes. They will continue down the path of detachment, believing it is the only way to survive in a world that has shown them nothing but pain. They will choose isolation over intimacy, logic over emotion, and self-preservation over connection. But for others, there will come a moment of realization, a moment when they feel the weight of their own numbness. A moment when they recognize that while they have avoided pain, they have also denied themselves something far more important, the ability to truly live. Because what is strength, really, if it comes at the cost of feeling nothing? What is survival, if it means sacrificing the very things that make life worth living? So, is being cold-hearted a curse, or is it a necessity? The answer is both. Cold-heartedness is a curse when it takes over completely, when a man becomes so numb that he forgets what it means to feel. When he is no longer protecting himself, but simply existing without purpose, without meaning, without connection. But cold-heartedness is also a necessity at times. Life can be cruel. Pain is real. And sometimes detachment is the only way to survive. There are moments when a man must harden himself, when he must silence his emotions to make the right decision, to protect himself, to keep moving forward. The key is balance. A man must know when to be guarded and when to open up. He must learn when to detach and when to allow himself to feel. True strength is not about choosing one extreme or the other. It is about mastering both. A man who understands this will not be controlled by his emotions, but he will not be a prisoner of numbness either. He will not be ruled by pain, but he will not fear it. He will be strong, not because he is cold, but because he knows how to face his emotions without letting them destroy him. At the end of the day, the choice belongs to him. He can continue living behind the walls he has built, untouched, unreachable, untouchable. Or he can take the risk of feeling, of trusting, of loving again. Not because he has to, but because life is not meant to be lived in the dark.